Hello and welcome back to another MongoDB Podcast Live. I'm Shane McAllister. I'm on lead on our developer relations team here at MongoDB. And today we've got a fascinating discussion, as ever, lined up where we're going to tackle the crucial topic of building AI products and going deep on a discussion with my guest today with regard to integration or building from scratch. But before we get into the meat of today's topic, some housekeeping, some quick housekeeping. So if you're new to these podcast live streams, it's really good to have you. Thank you for joining us. Do visit the MongoDB YouTube channel and LinkedIn to find out future shows and episodes such as this as well too. And you can also check out the past episodes that we've been broadcasting, certainly for the last 2 years or more. If you're a returning viewer, it's really good to have you back. Thank you for joining us once again. So whilst we get ready for today's live stream, it is live, so please drop a shout out into the chat on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Tell us who you are, where you're joining in from. We really love to hear from our fantastic viewers. And once the conversation gets underway today, feel free to pop any burning questions that you might have in for our guest into the same chat. And we'll try to tackle them either live, if that's relevant to what we're discussing at the time, or if we've got some time to wrap them up at the end of today's show. We really appreciate the interactivity. That's why we do this live on LinkedIn and YouTube every Tuesday. As ever, this is being recorded though, so don't be worried if you can't join for all of it or you've missed the start. You can always jump back into MongoDB's YouTube channel and catch up again at your leisure, so that's no problem there. So that's the end of the housekeeping, and with that, on with the show. Today, I'm joined by Akshaya Murthy, who's Director of AI Transformation at Zendesk. And the conversation he's gonna guide us through, I suppose, the maze of building AI products today. We're gonna hit enterprise challenges, AI washing pitfalls, and the crucial architectural decisions that you need to know going on your AI journey. So Akshaya, you're very welcome to the MongoDB podcast. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on the show, Shane. Really excited to talk about all the topics you just discussed.
Excellent. Listen, and so am I. And you know, most of these, as I said in the intro, I've been doing these for nearly 2 years now. Certainly in the last year, Akshaya, they've all been about building AI products. And I suppose, you know, sometimes the conversation rallies around why and how and should you and what you should be concerned about. But before we get into the meat of that, I suppose what I love to do with most of our guests is kind of dig a little bit into the background. I introduced you as the Director of AI Transformation at Zendesk, but how did you get there? What's your career path and your career journey to date, please, Akshaya?
Yeah, mine is a little less orthodox from a journey perspective to where I am today. When I started off about 20 years ago, 21 years ago in my career, I was making computer games. So we were at that time thinking about AI and thinking about concepts like, if the character in the game does not know that we exist, what does it mean from
Mhm.
a creator being perspective, and how do we design AI for the game? So began there,
Okay.
uh, and then went into software services, built a bunch of products for customers for about 30-40% of my career. Went into consulting with the Big Four, did a lot of consulting around transformations, enterprise redesign, and also got into internal audit to get a holistic view of how a company operates and how it should operate, what good looks like. And now I'm in a state where we have this technology which is so powerful, so
Mhm.
horizontal compared to all the previous technologies we've had, that I had to put myself in the seat uh, to see what's possible. And this is a natural transition from a transformation angle into transforming the company to do its best with this new technology and redesigning our thinking around how do we fundamentally change how we operate as a company? How do we deliver great products to our customers and our employees? And we position ourselves, Zendesk, as a leader in the AI space. That means we should be leaders internally and
Mhm.
externally, or it shows that you're not fully in the game. So my job right now is to really look at the problems, look at the solutions, and see where AI can lead the game for us and truly position us as an AI leader, both inside and out.
Okay. So many of my guests, obviously, AI, as I said, been to the forefront of that. And a lot of guests that I get in this space say, look, AI has been around for a long time. It was machine learning before that. It's just become to the public awareness, I suppose. Obviously, November 22, ChatGPT breaks onto the scene and people are getting more familiar with AI. But obviously, AI transformation is a huge area that you're now focused on. And what does that mean in a practical sense? Maybe first of all, from a Zendesk point of view, and then, from a broader experience and to customers as well.
Yeah. AI, I think, is a means to an end to a large extent. It is a brand new technology, it's a tool. So my job really is to identify tangible, high return opportunities, workflows, processes that can be transformed with AI, and to accomplish the goals that we set up. That is, improve employee experience, improve customer experience, make our operations best in class. So taking all those end goals into mind, we work backwards and say, how can we deploy this technology safely in a fruitful manner while being cost efficient and
Okay.
scalable? So this means from a KPI perspective, we want to be delivering on productivity lift, CSAT lift, revenue lift, EBITDA lift, things like that, that truly move the needle for the company. And uh, from a transformation perspective, advocating for the use of this technology internally, because the adoption doesn't move on its own. You have to tell users what the benefits of the technology is, and you have to deliver on those promises. So you build credibility over a period of time.
Okay.
So,
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So I suppose, look, before I get too deep into this conversation with you, for the listeners that we have, Akshaya, who may not be familiar with Zendesk, and I would imagine that's probably a small number. We use it in MongoDB for a lot of our operations as well, too. If they're not deeply familiar with Zendesk, could you give us a little brief overview and the sort of core problems that Zendesk helps to solve?
First of all, thanks for being a customer. It pays our bills.
No
um,
worries, no worries. I use it.
um,
If I find myself using it, it's because something, I need to get somebody somewhere in the company to do something. And the triaging of things is superb through it. I have to say that, in fairness. We've moved a lot of things across from various platforms to Zendesk more recently.
Great. That's wonderful to hear. And I think you bring up the point I was trying to make. Really think of Zendesk as a connective tissue between you and your customers, because it's the one platform that can make sure you solve customer problems, you listen to them, and you deliver on what they want. So Zendesk as a platform essentially delivers three things. It delivers unified communications and conversations, where at every touch point, be it email or messaging or phone, we bring it all into one user experience and into one single pane of glass, so that you can resolve customer issues and maintain that positive customer relationship. The second is we deliver on frictionless self-service with our AI products like generative search. So customers can find instantaneous answers. They don't have to open a ticket and wait. And also chatbots and the likes, so that customers get that instant gratification and their resolution immediately. And finally, we deliver actionable insights into what are the trends of communications and conversations you're having with the customers, and what are the patterns of problems that you're seeing. How are your SLAs doing? So robust reporting on that front, so that you can make your customer service better and better over a period of time on a daily basis. So that's what Zendesk does. So we are essentially a customer support and customer relationship platform that you can scale without any sort of chaos. We have about 100,000 brands as our customers,
Wow.
from Airbnb to Shopify, and they all handle billions of interactions per year. So that's what we are delivering on. And right now we are going into the AI era where we're focusing on delivering resolutions, because the conversation has changed from
Mm-hmm.
help me get to a resolution to I want resolution now instantaneously. And we are helping customers accomplish that.
Okay. So you mentioned they're entering the AI era. Obviously, Zendesk has been around a long time, seen as the leader, as you say, in the customer service space. But from a Zendesk perspective, how, the emergence of AI internally, how has that shaped and changed things with how Zendesk? You mentioned that, a bunch of products that you're building, the AI search, the chatbots, et cetera, as well, too. But internally within Zendesk, how has AI changed how things are done, and kind of that real push towards being able to launch these new products on your platform?
Yeah, internally, the conversation has changed. AI is not just an add-on anymore. That used to be a
Hmm.
couple of years back. It's the design principle right now that
Okay.
we
Okay.
are AI first, and our lens is what can we accomplish with AI that we weren't able to in the past, and how do we truly solve a customer problem? That's where we begin, and we are re-architecting our solutions to accomplish that goal. So as examples, we've seen three shifts. As you mentioned, one of them is intelligent routing and triage and routing, where it would take a few humans to look through a ticket and look through a problem and understanding, okay, what is the issue here? What is the solution? Now AI can do that in seconds. So that's one big shift where we are getting the customer closer to a solution faster. And the second one is we haven't moved away. We're moving from macros to copilots.
Okay.
Macros essentially where automations you could have in your ticketing system, where you could do a set of rule-based activities based on what you see in the ticket with machine learning, etc. But now we are directly moving to copilots where we're saying, okay, what is the next best action? What is the guidance we can give to the agent to solve the problem? What information can we give upfront to customers? So that's the second shift. And what we've seen with that is early adopters, they've been able to cut in extreme cases
Hmm.
92% on their email handle time because the triage is instantaneous.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they've cut 74% time in responding to customer questions. So those are the outcomes of the moving to copilots. And finally, um, we're moving to a siloed staffing, say a contact center, into a workforce that is automatically managed, and load balancing happens automatically. So you run a very efficient ship at the end of
Okay.
the day from a customer support perspective, and you deliver a customer experience that is number one in the industry. So to tie it all together, we are shifting from building better ticketing software
Hmm. Hmm.
to how do we deliver measurable business outcomes for our customers? So that's the shift, and AI is taking us in that direction.
Okay, so and I suppose that also, Akshaya, is a change in customer expectations, right? You mentioned there, something's wrong. I made a ticket. I know that's going to take a while to get somebody to respond to that. But how is AI driven, I suppose, increased or shortened customer expectations going, there's some intelligence behind what I've just asked things to do. Surely I can get an answer straight away. Has the increasing prevalence of AI meant that people are expecting more instantaneous kind of responses, results?
Yeah, if I think back, there are, I think, three shifts in how
Hmm.
customers are seeing outcomes from AI, and it is ridiculous how quickly that has shifted from an option to an obligation.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
and
ridiculous. The timescales are being so compacted into, I see this all the time in really good demos and, proof of concepts, but at scale that, it is ridiculous how swiftly this space is moving. I
yeah,
totally agree with you on that.
so if I think about the three shifts, the first shift is immediacy. That's a new baseline. There's no room for any slack there,
Mm, mhm,
where all customers right now want the solution right now.
mhm.
Okay, not soon, not tomorrow, not in 2 hours.
Sure.
They want now. SLAs are immediate. That's one big shift that we are seeing, especially at the consumer customer level. Not so much on the B2B customer level, but that's shifting as well. Second, there's an expectation from the customer that if I reach out to you for help, you better know why I'm reaching out, what I've
Mhm.
tried in the past, and what has worked and not worked. So the context of the interaction is not optional. The
Okay.
context has to be known. So there has to be information in the system that has the customer 360 and exactly knows what you're trying to solve for and what's been tried before. So you can do the right thing. And the third one, which is kind of ironic, AI must feel human centric. Okay.
Okay.
One interesting number I've read in the past is in 2025, 90% of companies are saying AI is central to customer loyalty. Okay. But the same survey shows that if the customers find out it's a bot responding to them, loyalty drops off a cliff. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
how do you balance that? So that's those are three shifts that we are seeing, and in short, customers don't care how you do it. They want the solution now. They want it to get done now, and they want a instantaneous, personalized, streak-free experience. And AI lets businesses do that at scale, and Zendesk as a platform delivers those capabilities.
Okay. Okay. So no, yeah, I think the changing expectations, as you rightly kind of expressed there, and I love the fact that you double down on the human-centric piece, because I have a friend, an old colleague of mine, different company, obviously, who works in a similar-ish space, but the company started off back in the day where you dialed a number and you pressed one for this department, two for this department. And I used to complain to him about customer service from utility companies and things like that too. And he goes, yeah, the reason why their system is so bad is that they don't want to talk to you at the end of the day. They're hoping that you just hang up. So, and I think we've changed, as you said. Now when somebody contacts you, they want that memory, they want that history of why they're getting in touch, and AI helps that. So yeah, no, really good overview of how Zendesk is helping and how it's changed. I suppose bringing the conversation back to today's topic. So building AI products, but the specific focus, and you and I chatted on the prep for this, about integration versus building from scratch. And I think that's key. I don't think I've covered this before enough on the previous live streams with other guests, that, this is a debate that many companies and many teams are having these days when, as you said, the rush to get out a solution that leverages and uses AI, they lean towards whether they build it themselves or whether they integrate other solutions from other partners there. What are the arguments in your case, the pros and cons of each approach, Akshaya?
Yeah, this takes me back to when I began my enterprise career. Once I got out of gaming and got into enterprise tech,
Mm-hmm.
and the rage back then, 20 years ago, was ERP. Yep. ERP systems were maturing fast and they were
Mm-hmm.
coming online, and SAP was everywhere. Oracle was still growing. Um, and the discussions were the same back then. Why do we need such a heavy duty system? Let's just build our
Mm-hmm.
own.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually over time, they realized, okay, this could get complex really, really quickly. So we can't keep up with the tech debt that comes along with building such a massive, complex, sophisticated system. So let's buy.
Mm-hmm.
So that conversation and that debate happens with every major technological shift, where CFOs are trying to get to an ROI point where they say to their investors, "We invested in this new technology, and this is the outcome." And the
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty associated with that outcome is very high right now with AI, because you don't know how much cost to attach. You have some cost plus baseline
Sure,
to
sure.
attach, but how do you drive adoption and drive revenue profitability with that? It's a sticking point. So trying to make a decision comes down to really four or five aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I think number one is time to market and speed to impact.
Okay.
If you're looking at building your own AI system or integrating, what will get you to the finish line now and help you stay competitive? Build it if it lets you do that. Buy it if it lets you do that. That's one decision point. Second is a lower TCO compared to existing systems. So
Okay.
can you deliver over the long term a lower cost of ownership and a higher ROI by building your system versus integrating? To give you an example, if you take speed to impact and lower cost of ownership, you can bring online a Zendesk AI system in a week, 2 weeks. Try building that ground up. It could take months to quarters to years and the capex associated with it. So definitely on both those factors, you're going to lose. So given the early stages of the technology, I would say integration would be a better option. And that's how enterprises are looking at it. Except when you have a ton of money in the bank,
Right.
companies are doing it. Because the third point where it gets really tricky is you could probably put in a couple of rooms the AI experts available in the United States right now who
Right.
can build systems at scale.
Mhm,
And even if you're able to land a pipeline from a university, say Stanford or Berkeley, of AI experts, that's still going to cost you 500K a pop minimum. Right now, it's only going to go up as
Yes.
the talent wars heat up. So those things really drive up the cost. And finally, security and compliance. You have to, when you build a product or when you build an integration, you have to take into account what are the security factors I need to build in. And every company is not a security expert company. So building out new products is going to take time. So I lean towards integration in that sense, because those factors just don't work out in the short
Okay.
term. So buying currently or integrating currently lets you focus on the scarce dev bandwidth you have within your company and getting products fast to market so you can start delivering value. And then you can start exploring, okay, which should I build now and what aspects of it should I build?
Okay. No, very insightful, I suppose. Yes, and yeah, unless you've got a large bank balance, it's a costly endeavor, as well too, I suppose. Kind of, I suppose, given that push towards integrating rather than build, unless you've unique use case, perhaps the integration is probably the way most people will go. I suppose I have two questions about that. Both of them are kind of on the same topic, Akshaya, really. What's your input on the current state of the maturity of AI products that you might be integrating in a system? Because going back to what we were chatting about earlier, it changes so quickly. There's always a new kid on the block. There's always something more powerful. There's always something, trained more, has better influence, lower cost. If you are doing the integration side of things, how do you take that into account as well too, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you look at the current product landscape available and product development in general, the maturity of off-the-shelf products has skyrocketed. Right now, if you just look at GPT-4 versus the open source Llama models, the 70 billion model, the gap is narrowing. Okay. So you don't have to build. You can take a Llama model and run an inference node on it and get similar results. And we're also seeing, because of years and years of security frameworks coming to maturity and companies understanding how to do security well within products. Right now, all the products we're seeing come with enterprise grade plumbing already, with respect to security, with respect to GDPR compliance, privacy compliance, etc., because those are table stakes. And one recent trend I've seen is AI has become the number one investment line item in companies' priorities versus cybersecurity. So what they're seeing is these off-the-shelf products are good enough. We can run with it without compromising too much on the security and privacy end. So given the capability parity that is narrowing and you have security built in, The other thing you get with off-the-shelf models is that upgrades are free, be it OpenAI or be it open source platforms. The per token cost is reducing on a daily, and you can potentially deliver a 10x cheaper solution with Llama with 5x better inference if you run it on your own nodes for specific use cases. So model refreshes are not yearly or monthly. It's almost happening on a weekly basis. Especially if you go to Hugging Face and you pick up open source models, it's on a daily basis. So that kind of changes the narrative in terms of what off-the-shelf products can do. What in 2023 you needed a bunch of PhDs with prompt experience and prompt engineering. Today, a product manager can do with a drag and drop interface. So
Okay.
it's shifted pretty
Yes.
significantly. So those are my points of view on off the shelf. I don't know if I fully answered your question.
No, definitely. Do you think we're seeing or will see, I don't know if we're seeing it just yet, but a level of convergence? In other words, like the big cloud providers back in the day, right? Three emerged top of line. They were the bankers that if you're deciding to host, you're going with one of the three. Do we think we're in kind of a pathway towards something like that with regard to the LLM providers as well too?
Yeah, I think we're not yet there. We're getting there. And I think there's always going to be a delta between open source and commercially available solutions. But the bottom line is commoditization of the AI product space is real. Okay. If you look at the LLM APIs, you're probably paying $2 for 1 million tokens with OpenAI, and you could get to a much lower price point with Llama to fractions of a cent per token. So in that sense, it's converging that okay, we don't have to build our own, we can rely on these models. But then on the flip side, there's an innovation gap at the very bleeding edge. Say you have a mission critical application for military purposes or banking, as you mentioned, healthcare. You still have to build your own. It has to be bespoke because the data set that you need to get that kind of use case going is completely different from what you get from the open source or open AI models or any of the commercially available models because they're general purpose. So in
And
that
if you were
sense,
to consider, like, is it a question, Akshaya, of building your own or fine-tuning or training an existing model, perhaps in your particular vertical for those kind of specialized use cases? Which do you think would be better?
fine-tuning is also very expensive.
Yeah, fair enough.
However, what I would a good metric to use is potentially at hyperscale. Say you're serving billions of tokens per hour, per minute, whatever be that case. Your token cost far exceeds what a self-hosted LLM stack would look like. Okay, so in those cases where you have to continuously build your own models, you would rather choose to build your own versus having to rely on open source because the cost equation doesn't work out. The calculus shifts in
Sure.
favor of building your own.
Yeah. And I think if I look back even at the episodes that I've done in this space, cost always gets mentioned, but cost is a kind of, as you said, they're becoming a commodity now. The costs are lowering, but they still exist. And as you said, at the hyperscale, at that heavy use case, when you've got, something that's put out in production and at huge volume, costs need to be factored in. Are you seeing any of that kind of feedback from your customers as well too, saying, yeah, I like this product, it's brilliant, it's so good, but you know what, it's much more costly than what we used to have in terms of the simple chatbots back in the day?
Yeah, there's a couple of trends I'm seeing, not just from our customers, but we as customers of other AI products. I think there's a certain level of mispricing going on because nobody is truly honed in on this is how much value we can extract out of this, and hence value-based
Mm-hmm.
pricing applies here.
Mm.
We have moved towards Zendesk, as you've seen, is moving towards resolution-based pricing. So you don't pay per token, but you pay for the value we deliver. So
Okay.
the
Okay.
industry is shifting,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of offsets some of the costs, but it is still thin margin because not everyone knows how to price it yet
Mm. Mm.
and what that end customer value looks like. So as those models start to mature, I feel it'll become more and more like the internet, where you're no longer paying by the gigabyte or the megabyte or
Mm-hmm.
speed.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying for a utility,
Mm-hmm.
and you build on top of it. And that changes the equation in terms of how companies look at the value, how companies look at the cost. So right now, uh, it is still profitable to use LLM APIs to build products
Mm-hmm.
on top of APIs and integrating. But I think there's over time, as companies and LLM providers realize the kind of value they're delivering, I think the price will ramp. Although it's
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's going to go to zero, but there's going to be cost compression on the cost side. But there's going to be some sort of value add tax that
Okay.
companies will start to charge. So I think there's a divergence there, and it'll stabilize somewhere in between.
Perfect, perfect. And I just want to shout out to some of the viewers that have joined and us from all over the place, from Denmark and Wisconsin and Burkina Faso and Nairobi and everybody. So thank you so much for dropping into the comments. If you have questions for Akshaya as we go through, or even me, just drop them into the comments and we'll try and tackle them. I want to get towards the implementation and the architecture and the pitfalls piece. But one thing back what you said earlier with regard to security, is there, in terms of, say, Zendesk's clients, for example, is there a concern that, by using these third-party tools, companies are giving their information away to train these LLMs and AI models?
Uh, the straight answer is no. There's
Okay, fair enough. Straight answers are
uh,
always good too.
yes. Let me explain why. Um, when we pick up a vendor that we want to work with, we have very strict security and privacy requirements, and they're contractually obligated to deliver on those requirements. For
Okay.
example, any of the AI model vendors we work with cannot store or train their models based on our data, and
Okay.
essentially a zero retention, zero training clause
Mhm.
in the contract. And that is table stakes for us. Second,
Okay.
around security, Zendesk is probably one of the most secure uh, customer success CX platforms out there. And we value that a lot because customer interactions should be trustworthy. And
Mhm.
if we compromise that, no one's going to use our platform. So that's built into the culture of the company, and hence into our products. So in general, AI products, since the models themselves are, you cannot break apart a model and go back to the constituents. You
Mhm.
could,
Mhm.
but
Mm. Mm.
not everyone can do that. And the APIs themselves have pretty robust security in
Mhm.
terms of role-based access controls and encryption in transit and in storage.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so all those fundamental features come into play. And internally, from a governance perspective, we are going off of the NIST playbook to secure all our assets,
Mhm.
make sure
Mhm.
our customer data is not compromised and our customer security is not compromised. So 100%. And every company thinking of building an AI product should go security and privacy first, and
Mm.
make
Mm.
sure their customers' trust is embedded in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think they're very good points. I think it's one of the first kickbacks you get from somebody when you're saying we're going to build this, and they're kind of going, "What about customer, data privacy, security, and then all of the kind of why are we giving away?" But I think the approach that you've done and the approach that you've outlined makes a ton of sense. I'm conscious of time. I want to get into given your experience and given what you've seen in the market there, Akshaya, kind of when enterprises do decide to implement AI solutions, whether it's integrated or built, there are some common and significant challenges that they must all face. We talked a little bit about some of the, the security encryption pieces as well too, but let's talk a little bit maybe about data quality and readiness for them to do that, and change management. And one thing that you did mention earlier was, defining that ROI. These are big projects, regardless of whether you're integrating or building from scratch. So talk to me a little bit about your experiences or Zendesk's experiences in that space.
Yeah, the way I think about it is most AI failures are not algorithmic failures. The algorithm works. It's the plumbing, the people, and proving out the value of the platform. That's what hinders AI applications in general from an enterprise adoption perspective. So first and foremost, the data cannot be messy. If you don't have a data strategy, you don't have an AI strategy. As simple as that.
Okay.
So
it's a good mantra to live by. I think
yep.
as a MongoDB, as a database company, yeah, we like that one.
Absolutely. So as long as you have messy data, you're going to have problems. So bringing it to a centralized, some sort of a data lake house with a single source of truth helps a lot in furthering the mission that AI's value can be delivered and value can be realized. Second big piece I'm seeing is a skills gap, as we talked about. Legacy, it's crazy how SaaS companies have become legacy now.
Things move quickly, definitely.
Absolutely. So there's a skills gap in terms of be it MLOps engineers, be it AI engineers, be it the folks engineering products and the people selling the products and the employees working at the company. They all have to come together and say, okay, I see the big picture with AI. The big difference between legacy SaaS and AI companies is that AI first companies, every single employee is bought in. AI it is.
Okay.
There's no skepticism. It's
Right.
it's go from day one. But with SaaS, you have to convince people, and that takes time. That AI delivers value, and you got to do proofs of concept. So that's the second biggest hurdle I've seen. That is people. And the third biggest piece I've seen is some sort of fuzzy ROI around what delivery can bring in terms of value. I've seen too many POCs where they say, we will cut your cost by 90%, but how? Show me. And that's not really clear. So those are some of the big challenges we face in terms of enterprise AI adoption. And the biggest of all is really skills gap, I think, where you got to get the people up to speed because they will drive the ship forward. And right now, companies are just struggling to do that.
Okay. So the skills gap is real, but I suppose, as you mentioned, the SaaS companies, the older companies, as you call them now, is there an element of skepticism in some of these larger companies per se? And, it's AI might be just a fad. It's a cycle we're just going through. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon to deliver something that has AI attached to it.
That was the case 6 months ago, where they use the product and they're like sort of middling value delivery, where they talk to ChatGPT and say, oh, it made up some stuff. So they tend to extend that notion to all AI products, although most enterprise products have some sort of fine-tuning, some sort of guardrail structure in place to make sure it doesn't happen. So that's one barrier that we had to get across, even at Zendesk, where there's some amount of skepticism on the technology. And what we did was upskill people, train them on what AI can do, show them real use cases, talk about customer wins and the success stories that we have, and also train people internally on hands-on. One session of hands-on training with AI beats 20 courses, beats 30 messaging through Slack. So that's one thing we did. Second is we ramped up the messaging from the leadership that we are really committed to this technology space, and we're going to deliver in this space, and this is the future. That aligns everybody in that direction. If
Okay.
there's no C-suite messaging, it becomes harder, and we've done a good job at that. So in that sense, bringing people along for the ride makes a big difference.
Okay. Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense. I mentioned it in the introduction, and it was something that I hadn't heard of before we were doing our prep for this live stream, was AI washing. Akshaya, talk to me a little bit about that. What is AI washing? What are the telltale signs? What are the dangers for businesses when they are participating in AI washing? This new phrase that I'm going to steal from you now and use it going forward as well too.
We've seen too many of these, unfortunately. The AI washing essentially in one statement is it's a buzzword salad with no specifics and marketing around AI,
Okay.
but it doesn't really deliver any sort of value, or there are no specifics on how it's going to deliver value, etc. I actually saw a rice cooker with a sticker saying AI powered. I'm like, dude, this is true AI washing. Okay,
Wow.
so
Okay.
from an enterprise perspective, um, basically, if the vendor is not truly offering a solution to a core problem and just wants to add a little feature on the side that is a straight plug from an LLM, then that's AI washing. It's not uh, you are not re-architecting the solution. You're not reimagining how the value can be delivered or the problem can be solved, and you're just trying to plug in an AI buzzword there. So you'll see those. And second, if there are no ROIs attached to it, there's no KPI attached to it, and it does not line up with the kind of expectations people have with AI, then you know that it's a AI wash solution. For example, in all the AI related POCs and the platforms we have implemented at Zendesk internally, we see anywhere between 2x to 50x ROI. That's
Okay.
the new reality with AI.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
if somebody comes in and says, I'm going to lift your CSAT by 10%, then we know that that's not the case because we expect more. And the other thing I've heard is this will solve all your problems. One size fits all. We don't have to customize it. This does everything. That may be true in very small fraction of cases, like ticket summarization. Okay,
Okay.
that you can do with a straight LLM, but it does not deliver value all the time. Finance system powered by AI does finance specific things, and it delivers on a particular solution for solving a particular problem. So 4 points: if the AI solution is not solving a particular problem with defined KPIs and ROIs, and showing how exactly it's solving it with AI versus the other one, you can quickly tell that, okay, this is some rule-based engine. They're just masquerading as AI.
Okay. Okay. So AI for value rather than just hype, basically attaching it to the rice cooker example, as you said. I think, certainly, obviously, MongoDB launched our vector search back in June 2023, and we've had some great success there. Sometimes when we're talking with our developers and our communities, it's super easy to create a RAG app, a retrieval augmented generated app, by taking all of your data, unstructured and structured, and running it through embedding model and creating the embeddings, and then building, a chat app that you can talk with your data. But in a lot of cases, and I've seen this maybe with some of the hackathons we do, and some of the developers kind of like, do you know what? This is great and it does work, but it's overkill. This is not, if you had a clearly defined search query and your search indexes, you wouldn't have needed to have this approach, which is essentially a boil the ocean approach. In other words, embed my query, take that against everything that I've stored, and come back with some answers and run that through an LLM. So I hear you. You can say it's AI, but you don't necessarily need it. attached to it, and I love that it's delivering value rather than just hype. I think we see that too often. I think that I'll have to Google that rice cooker with AI now, Akshaya, and have a look at that. Most
Maybe
definitely.
you'll get better cooked rice. I don't know, man.
You mentioned already kind of making sure the data is sufficiently prepared for your AI application that you're going to build as well. What are other kind of key architectural decisions? So we talk about one end, the data that's powering this application, but what about scalability and reliability and kind of, I suppose, feedback loops or model monitoring or all of that sort of stuff at the other side of once you've deployed your AI solution?
Yeah, from an architectural decision-making perspective, first of all, you should have clean data plumbing, whether they're
Mhm.
pipelines or a single source of truth or scrubbing PII.
Mhm.
What you feed is what you get. I say garbage in, hype out with AI. So bad data even breaks the perfect models. The transformer works, but your data is terrible. Second big architectural decision you should make, and I think it's going to serve you in the long run very well, is building a modular API first model layer. Why that's important is just like you wouldn't hold your customer hostage with a single ISP to run your application, you cannot hold them hostage to a single model.
Okay.
So by building out containerized and microservicized model infrastructure, you can hot swap, and
Yes.
that'll become very important, not just from a reliability perspective and security perspective, but also optionality for your customer, because they don't want to bind to a single LLM model either. They want to be able to
Sure.
move around. Third, I think it's very important to have CI/CD for your models itself.
Okay.
Okay, so that there are automated tests when you swap out a model. There's a one-click rollback, just like code, if the model doesn't work or it's behaving abnormally compared to baselines. So I think it makes very, very good sense to have CI/CD for your own models. And then, as you said, monitoring and drift detection, so the model just doesn't go into a space after 6 months of reinforcement learning. That doesn't work for you from a problem perspective. And always have a human in the loop. Invest in that human side of things to make
Yes.
sure all the outputs you're getting, you're taking the best of learnings and you're feeding it back into the model, so it only gets better over time. And the rest are table stakes. Cached infrastructure, it's elastic, it's hyper scalable, both horizontally, vertically. Security is baked in, and you're doing bias testing, you're doing ethics guidelines implementation. So those are table stakes, but from a pure architectural perspective, data modularity with your models, CI/CD for your models, and monitoring and human in the loop. I think those are fundamentally important from a concept perspective.
Okay, I like that approach too. We did something similar in MongoDB with our MAP program, which is MongoDB AI Applications program, whereby we partnered with a lot of the LLMs, the orchestrators, etc., in the space, and made a composable reference architecture for our customers to use. So they all have, LLMs, frameworks, they all have their pros and cons. So the ability to say, well, look, we played with this, you can swap them in and out. And I think that's important. We talked about how swiftly this area is moving. So you're right. As you design this in mind, make it composable, make the ability to be able to swap in and swap out key components. And obviously, I think the CI/CD piece is really, really important. I don't think it's definitely in the AI space, it's never a one and done. You're going to have to keep an eye on that. As you said, keeping the human in the loop is super important, because whatever guardrails we put in our AI applications, you know what, we've seen enough poor mistakes in released AI applications from big companies in those instances, but they had to quickly roll back most definitely. So I suppose, would you consider all of that Akshaya, under the umbrella of responsible AI, when you're about to deploy this in a company, you've ticked all these boxes.
Yeah, if I go back to the NIST framework for
Mhm.
recognized risk, that is govern, map, measure, and manage. Okay,
Mhm.
that cycle has to be implemented thoroughly. Usually, product teams are pretty good at implementing frameworks to manage that risk. But there's a bit of a shift in the AI space where it's a bit different. So that you bake trustworthiness into each phase, pre-training, training, post-training, model delivery, application layer. So you have to have it on all layers. And from a responsible AI perspective, I think you should look out for unacceptable risks. That is, clarify the use cases by risk, make sure unacceptable risks are taken out of the system entirely so that you're in compliance, especially if you're trying to do business with EU and companies in EU. Make sure high risk ones are taken out of the question altogether. And bias and privacy should be by design. Pay attention to the data you're using to train your models. Pay attention to the reinforcement learning loops, and make sure there's training and validation. Otherwise, you'll serve up something that's going to be huge legal liability and reputational liability for you over the long term. Just look at what happened in the early stages of Google.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that. So those three, I think, should get to the heart of, okay, let's deliver the product now.
Do you think bias is still a key thing to be concerned about? I know certainly, back a year, 18 months ago, that was, top of mind for a lot of people. These models, they were, I think, so quickly trying to produce new models and get them out there that, bias and those other checks and balances, for want of a better word, went unnoticed or unchecked, as it were. Do you think that's still a case in the space, Akshaya?
I'll give you a real example. For an internal event at Zendesk for finance leadership, we were trying to create the little toys using ChatGPT.
Oh, the characters. Yes.
Characters.
The action figure type things.
Action
Yeah,
figures,
I know.
yes.
Yeah.
So I put in my picture and said, create an action figure of me, and it automatically named my action figure Ankur Patel. Okay. So
automatically, right? Fair
automatically.
enough.
So for people who don't get it, it's the stereotypical Indian name in the United States. So I think there's bias. There's definitely some bias. And there's also bias because the training data is mostly English. There are small pieces of training data coming in from other languages. So the nuances of culture, the nuances of dialect is lost. Now we are leaning heavily towards not just English, American training data. So that definitely, I think bias is not going to go away anytime soon. You can control for it by at the application layer. And we've seen that happen. So to answer your question, yeah, bias is still a problem. And that's where bespoke models come in for things like banking applications where you have to make sure you're not making decisions based on race or gender or sexual orientation, things like that. And there's ways to go there.
Okay. You touched on it there too about evaluating the models. I've seen a lot of tools out there that, you can upload your evaluation sets. We've seen, as and when a new model gets released, the standard sites that evaluate these new models are running them through the various kind of token evaluation sets that they know about. Is that something that Zendesk would have had paid attention to? In other words, evaluating the best models for the task at hand in the products that you're building?
I think those benchmarks and evaluation tools serve a purpose. That is putting it out there that look how great our model is in generalized tasks. But I may not need a model that can solve LSAT questions. I need a model that solves customer problems. So if you've seen Zendesk in April, we did two things. We have a custom model to do the automated triage. But we also released on the same day a GPT-4o powered application feature.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you have to look at both options. Okay,
Sure.
where you can't take it at face value that just because it can solve the LSAT problem set or some sort of mathematical problem set, it's applicable to my use case. You
Hmm.
have to look at it both ways and see if you want to build your own in some cases, and if it serves a good purpose, you use the one with the highest benchmark. But even then, highest benchmark use cases really are for bespoke, like drug discovery and gene editing, things like that. It makes a lot of sense. But for general enterprise, I don't think it makes a big difference. Average performance is fine.
That makes sense. We've been trying in MongoDB to work with a lot of the code assistant providers to make sure that they understand MongoDB and that they, when prompted, can return back with a line or a block of code that's what we would consider best practice. And that's been work we've been doing for at least 18 months here now. And
Hmm.
we've enough knowledge to have our own evaluation set for these new LLMs as they get released. And but I think going back to what you're saying, it's not the best scoring one that's necessarily the most suitable for the task at hand as
Yeah,
well, too, because it's very nuanced, right?
correct. Uh, it's just like humans. I think LLMs are trained with the human model in mind. It's
Hmm. Hmm.
essentially they're trying to replace the human mental framework in
Sure.
some way, shape, or form. So it's going to come with the same nuances as a human being. The best scoring kid in class is probably not the brightest. Okay, so the most bright people dropped out of college. So there could be model performance indicators that allude to some performance in some fields that are better than general performance, which may be a better use case for you.
Okay, excellent. I'm conscious of time, and obviously for anyone who has any specific questions, I always say that when we do these live streams, if we get lots of questions, we're probably not making sense. If we don't get much questions, we're making a ton of sense. But there's always room, and please drop them in. We've a number of minutes left as well, too. We've covered an awful lot here in the consideration about going down the route of building an AI product. But what would you say, particularly for the product leaders or the C-suite? So what's the the most important thing to consider before they embark on this journey? Or is there a way to put
Hmm.
your thumb on one particular thing to consider? We talked about
Yeah.
getting the data correct. We talked about having a human in the loop. We talked about security and all those other table stakes things that are involved.
I think for C-suite leaders, the CTOs, CIOs, begin with a problem statement. Don't
Hmm.
jump into AI for the sake of, oh, I need to get something done with AI. No, begin with a problem statement. What are you trying to
Okay.
solve for? And is AI in part a solution for that problem? That's the fundamental starting point.
Okay.
And then once you get there, then you start to realize, okay, is my data in place to get this done? Is what is the best model to serve this particular purpose? Do I have the
Hmm.
people to get this established, or should I buy from outside? How much is it going to cost? And overall, does it deliver the EBITDA value I want, or deliver the top line value I want, or deliver on the KPIs I want? I think beginning from there is fundamentally important.
Okay.
And also upskilling your entire company. That'll
Mm.
set you up for success.
So on that point, and actually a comment just in as well too, which is just from Himanshu, thank you very much. So the need model fit trumps the performance scoring any day. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, Akshaya, about, evaluating the models and looking at the ones that most fit your need, which is great. On that piece that you just said there about upskilling within the company, um, how do you keep abreast as in your role, AI transformations? How do you keep on top of all of the changes? Is there a site that you go to, a podcast you listen to, or is there blogs that you read? Like, because for me, as I said earlier, and a couple of times, it's changing so quickly. It still is. It hasn't seemed to have any semblance of slowing down. How do you keep on top
Yeah,
of things yourself?
very opportunistic about these things. It's not that I have a focused, dedicated time every week, day or week to go look at AI developments, but a couple of shows or podcasts have really helped. If you want to get into a philosophical discussion, I think I need to get out of this room. I'm sorry about that.
No
The
worries. We'll wrap up then in a couple of seconds then, so no worries.
from philosophical discussion perspective, go to Lex Friedman's podcast, and AI Engineer is a good podcast to look at the details.
Excellent. That has been great. And just as a final parting comment, where can listeners go to learn more about Zendesk's AI initiatives and the products or trial things out, etc.?
Yeah, just go to Zendesk AI Hub. You'll be able to find all the information about the AI updates we're making and the product releases, demos, etc.
So Zendesk AI Hub. Well, listen, I think, as you said when we were starting this, there's a lot to talk about. I know we're at time. I know they're about to throw you out of the room.
Yep,
I do
I need to get
appreciate
out.
it, all of that. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been very informative, Akshaya. Hopefully keep in touch. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.